Happy New Year, everyone. Welcome to 2024. So glad you're here with us. Wow, we've got an amazing year ahead of us, and we've got a lot to talk about. Roll the intro. Hey, everyone, it's Cassandra Williamson, Executive Director for Transgender Diverse Veterans of America Action Group, and our other side too. But most of what I talk about is from the Action Group side. And we're trying to create that main barrier between those two sides because a lot of what I talk about is activism and all that kind of stuff. And, yeah, neither the two shall mix, okay? There's a disclaimer going across the bottom of the page down here. So all the opinions expressed here are mine and mine alone. They do not necessarily represent those of any organization, agency, department, government, or anything like that. They're my opinions, okay? So thank you for being here on this Monday morning. It is the 1st of January of 2024. Can you believe it? We've already gone through a whole year, and here we are again, ready to tackle a new one. Are you ready? Because this is going to be an interesting year of challenges and difficulties, and us being out in the front and trying to lead and, and trying to do things to make sure that this nation of ours is for all Americans, not just some of them. And the blessings of liberty are extended to everyone and not just ones who happen to look like, believe like, think like, all that kind of stuff, like whatever. So it's for all people, all Americans. So I come to you from Eastern Kentucky. I'm visiting with my brother and sister and mom and others here in the family and in the hills of Eastern Kentucky, folks. So it is definitely cold here. It's 31 degrees, or at least it was earlier. I don't know about right now. But anyway, so yeah, we've got a lot coming up in this year. So next week on the 10th of January, we are having a meeting of minds we're convening a bunch of organizations together to try to have this conversation around how we need to proceed in a way that can be effective across the whole nation. And it's going to be a challenge, folks. It's a big challenge. And, it's not an easy thing to do this, to stir up people and get things moving everywhere at the same time all over the country. But nonetheless, it's got to be done because there's some stuff out there that are the exact opposite of what it means to be securing the blessings of liberty for all Americans. And so that's our biggest fight, is making sure that we're heard, we're seen, that people know who we are, and we're using our veteran status to make sure we're in the front and leading this thing, because we've got a lot of privilege. We've got a lot of that stuff going for us here. So we're making sure that we're using that and actually doing things to advance our interests, but for all Americans, not just some, but all. And that's the whole crux of all of this. Okay, so we're not going to split people up into this group or that group. We're not going to proclaim that one is more right or less right than another. We're going to say this is for all Americans. And so that's exactly what we're fighting for, is to make sure that we do not deny those blessings of liberty to anyone in this nation who is deserving of them. And so, especially those of us who have served. So we're going to continue that fight, continue struggling to push for that, to make sure that we're all heard and seen and our voices aren't ignored. So we've been trying to do that. We tried to do all kinds of stuff in 2023, but so far the people who are controlling the narrative have no interest in talking with us. I think we don't fit their narrative. They'll talk to everybody except us. We've tried poking the bear, so to speak. We've been knocking on their door and saying, hey, we're here. I even walked into the Heritage Foundation's offices last year in 2023, and hoping I could speak with Dr. Roberts. But Dr. Roberts, after a good long 5-minute search for him, apparently he was not available to talk with me. I didn't expect otherwise, though, either. So nonetheless, we've been trying all kinds of things. I've been trying to get people to react to us, to respond to us. People who are pushing the narrative that, the blessings of liberty don't apply to some Americans. We're trying to fight back against it. All those people out there pushing for those things, from Matt Walsh, Christopher Rufo, Dr. Roberts, you name it. They're all over there. They won't talk to us. They will not talk to us. They'll talk to anybody who is not a veteran, but they won't talk to the veterans. Wonder why that is. I guess the reason is because, we kind of go against that grain of their narrative. I mean, can you imagine us having Commander Schilling, Emily Schilling on a program with Dr. Roberts or Christopher Rufo or anything? Commander Schilling, who is an active duty pilot, F-18 pilot in the United States Navy, and having Commander Schilling out there, or having Colonel Bree Fram, who's a space scientist with the Space Force, having these people out there actually talking with those people. No, they're not going to do that, because that goes against the narrative they want to present. So you'll never see those people talking over there on that side. You'll have knuckleheads talking for us over on that side, and try, and they do that because they think they can control the narrative better. But oh Lord, they do not want somebody who's a Naval Academy grad out there talking. I mean, my goodness, why on earth would you want to do that? I mean, unless, of course, and a lot of what's happening is, unless, of course, that you denigrate the entire services and say that they're all bad and they're all woke and all this kind of crap, when in reality, that's not the case at all. But, I mean, they're just recognizing that all Americans means all Americans and not just certain ones. But let me put it this way, too, and this is probably going to be the part that offends a lot of you who may be watching this show at some point today. But here's the thing. We are our own worst enemies more often than not. As a matter of fact, every time. We are our own worst enemies. We're out here doing crap that we don't need to be doing. We're out here forcing ourselves on others when you don't need to be doing that. You need to just live your life and let other people live their life how they choose. We have no right to tell another person that you've got to do this, you've got to accept that, or do it this way. That's wrong, folks. You can't do that. You've got to live your life and let them live their life within the definitions of how they wish to do that. You can't go out there and say, hey, you've got to say this, you've got to do that, you've got to be this. No, you don't. We don't have that right. Every person in this country is entitled to all those blessings of liberty, and that means even the things we may not like, but you have no right to go out and force yourself on another person. And if you're out there doing something that denigrates us in this community, in one way or another, like taking your top off at the White House, I mean, that was just asinine. That brought a lot of, they just fed the narrative that they wanted to use against us. So we've got to start policing the people who are doing the stupid crap out there and tell them to stop already. You don't need to go through a drive-through and demand and yell that somebody use your pronouns when, in fact, they don't know, and it's none of their business. You can't do that crap, okay? It does no good. Really, none whatsoever. You've got to stop with that and start realizing that those people have the right to hear and see you the way they want to, not the way you want them to. And that's just the way it is. You got to learn to live with that, okay? So that's what I mean by us being our own worst enemy. We are out here doing things that actually are more harmful. When you go out there and force yourself on someone else, you're causing more harm to the entire community just by that one act, and it becomes the narrative that gets broadcast all over the place, folks. So you've got to stop. We've got to figure out how to control our own people. We've gone way out, and then we're trying to force all this stuff, and it's just not the way it should work, folks. I'm sorry. It's just, if you don't like me saying that, well, stop acting like an idiot. Okay. That's all I can tell you. We have got to start doing this ourselves, making sure that we're calling out the people who are bringing disrepute upon on all of us. Okay. So you've got to stop it. And that's just the way it is. I mean, if you want to move the narrative, move the needle toward acceptance, stop forcing yourself on another person. We don't have that right. Not in this country. Nope. And here we are. We're talking about the blessings of liberty, and that every American is entitled to those things. And here we have some of our very own people trying to force themselves upon another person, denying them their blessings of liberty, when in fact, we want it for all people, right? That's the way it should be. So if you're one of those people out there screaming and hollering because you're not getting things done the way you think it ought to be done, or that person is saying something that is maybe offend you, well, so what? Turn around and walk away from it. Now, it happens all the time. Just leave it alone. Don't worry about it. Move forward. Be you, be real to yourself, but don't expect others to have to do the same thing, especially when you are presenting in a way that can be seen as being what you want to be. If you're going out there doing things and saying things and behaving in certain ways, and you're feeding that narrative that gets turned around and used against us, then you're the problem. Now, let's get back to 2024 and what we want to do. There's a lot of stuff, folks, that's coming up in 2024 that we need to handle, and we need to do it in a concerted, united effort. We need to stop with all these, my group is this group and my group is that group, and we're not going to do it any other way. We're not going to talk to that group because somebody may have offended me over there. And, all this internecine kind of warfare stuff that takes place between groups, which is natural, I suppose. This is not the year or the time to do that. We all need to be standing together to ensure that every single American in this nation is guaranteed the blessings of liberty for all of them and not just some of them. We need to stand together. And that's what we're doing on January the 10th. And we're doing it. We're bringing together some organization. We're convening this thing. It's like a council of councils kind of thing. We're going to have this conversation so we can start laying this narrative. It should have been done years ago. We should have been having this talk years ago, but we haven't. So given where we are now, given what we're in now and what we're facing now, we need to be coming together to do this. Now, if you want to be a part of that, if your organization, not as an individual, but your organization wants to be a part of this conversation next week, then let me give you my email address up here. I'll get to the banners and here, right there. There's my email address. Send me something. Let me know that you're interested in doing this. I've already got some commitments from some really amazing individuals that I have great respect for. They're coming in, having these conversations with us as much as they can. The time availability. Everyone's busy. I get it. Everyone is busy. But we need to be having this conversation because, hey, do we want somebody standing in front of a Heritage Foundation up there with a sign that says, Heritage doesn't listen to veterans? And Heritage does not believe that the blessings of liberty apply to all Americans. And there's proof to that. We've got proof behind that. They've actually said that in their Project 2025. I mean, it's very clearly stated as to who they want to delete. Dr. Roberts says that in the forward. I want to delete this and this and this and this word, that term, this group of people, that kind of thing, and then declares that the First Amendment doesn't apply to them. Well, let me just say that is a load of crap, folks. That is not securing the blessings of liberty for all Americans. It's just securing them for the ones that you want. The ones that look like, act like, believe like, think like you. And now, if they actually had the guts to do what some over there on that side have actually admitted, like Matt Walsh, for instance. On his Twitter profile, Matt Walsh calls himself, and this is in his little profile description. And if you've seen it, you can go check it out on Twitter. Go look up Matt Walsh. His profile says theocratic fascist. And that's exactly what he believes. And he understands that what he believes, and this is what he is. He calls himself a theocratic fascist. Well, these other groups out here are doing the exact same thing, but they don't have the guts that Matt has. So I applaud Matt for being so self-aware that he can see and identify who and what he actually is. And that's great. But Chris doesn't. Chris Rufo doesn't. Chris doesn't have the guts to say that. Dr. Roberts doesn't have the guts to say that. Even though all the way through Project 2025, you see all this crap taking place in there that is nothing but theocratic fascism. And I don't throw those terms out lightly, folks, because in 2003, 2003, 2004, a person by the name of Lawrence Britt came up with these 14 characteristics of what it means to be a fascist. And I'm going to tell you that every single one of them, the check boxes, just go check, 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 check. Matt falls into it. Chris falls into it. Dr. Roberts falls into it. Hillsdale College falls into it. The current version of the New College of Florida falls into it. I mean, they're all into this. I mean, every one of them, you could check it off. That was written in 2003. You can go look up Lawrence Britt. You can find him. He wrote that stuff and actually published it. The way he came up with those, he actually looked at fascist regimes around the world, such as Pinochet and Mussolini and Hitler. And there was about 7 that he actually investigated and came up with 14 common characteristics. They're there. You can see it, look it up, dig into it, find out for yourself. But you can see that everything that's there actually fits what's being done in Project 2025. Every bit of it is right there, clearly stated. I make a very clear statement about this is, the First Amendment doesn't apply to this group of people or that group of people or this way of thinking. They actually come out and tell you that, if you don't believe this way, then you're not protected by the Constitution. They say it, folks. It's there. It's in plain black and white print. You can go read it yourself. It's there. They say this. And they don't just say it once. They say it many times in that 920-page document. And I did that little word search. If you watch some of the shows I've done in the past, I did a word search in the PDF document. You can type in words. You can type in things like sexual orientation, gender identity. You can type in faith. You can type in any term out there. All those words, by the way, that they want to delete from all of the federal government, those words they want deleted. And those are the words that they use. They say, delete these terms, such as, and this is what Roberts wrote in the foreword, delete sexual orientation, gender identity, gender, anything to do with gender, gender identity, all of that kind of stuff, intersectionality, diversity, equity, inclusion, all those words he wants removed from the whole of the federal enterprise and never to be referred to again. And from what? Well, he tells you from what? From every rule, policy, regulation, law, any kind of thing like that, or grants even. Now, we all know there are social determinants of health. That one group, because of their social identities, their social location, or whatever socioeconomic location in the country, we know that there are impacts to their well-being because of those social determinants of health. We know that. And every minority population is different with that. They're not all the same. We know that. The science proves it. But if you stop the research on it, then you can be blind to it. They don't want to see it. They don't want to acknowledge that there are problems with those minorities because of one group saying that they have more or whatever, whatever the thing is. But they keep doing all these kind of things, and they're going after deleting all those terms. And then right underneath it in the next paragraph on page 4, I think it is, page 5, top of page 5, it says, they aren't entitled to First Amendment protections. Really? Really? We're seeing that today. There's one of the presidential candidates out there today who has just said, don't put a religious test on anyone who enters the country. If that's not theocratic fascism, I don't know what is, folks, but it is. It really is. You can't do that. You can't do that. Oh, you can certainly try. And obviously, a lot of this stuff that they want to do, it'll be litigated left and right. It'll be taken to court. People will challenge it all over the place, and it'll be stymied in court. But that's the purpose is not necessarily to win the whole thing all at once. If you can do a scatter shot out there, you get people to say, okay, this part of that saying is all right, then you've got a foothold. And that's how this works, is that you can do a scatter shot of everything you want. Of course, the courts jump in and say, we're going to stop this part, that part, that part. But if you leave a little bit of it in there for them, then the next year they'll turn right around and use the same little bit of foothold they grabbed the first time and then go back and rebuild it, make it so that it's acceptable and the courts won't stop it. And go down to the year number 3 down the line, they'll do it again. We see that in Florida. We see that in Texas. We've seen that everywhere across this country, where you get a toehold in there of one particular thing. Then the next time around, they make it bigger. Then the next time around, they make it bigger. They really go back to just telling you that really they're just theocratic fascists. So that's the whole story that's going on right now out there. And that's what we're facing in 2024, folks. We have got to make sure that when we bring our council of councils or our convening of groups together on January the 10th, that we are prepared to determine what our steps should be over the course of this year and going forward into the next and on down the road. We need to make sure that we have a strategic plan in place to implement these things and to make sure that the blessings of liberty apply to all Americans and not some Americans. And right now, like I said before, in Project 2025, they make it very clear that certain groups of people aren't entitled to First Amendment protections. And as I said, if you don't believe it, go read it. It's there. It says it plainly on bottom of page 4 and the top of page 5. It's right there in the foreword that Dr. Roberts wrote. And that's just what we're doing. And that's exactly what we need to be standing up and fighting against. We're not doing this for our community. We're doing this for all Americans, because if you can roll it back for any one group, then you can roll it back for the whole of the country. And then you can say that certain groups aren't entitled to First Amendment protections, which is what Roberts says in that 920-page document from the Heritage Foundation, Project 2025. So we've got to stand up against that stuff, because we want to make sure that every single American in this nation has those rights protected for themselves. And so, and you see my brother walk around in the back here. Yeah, well, so anyway, yeah, we're getting ready to go over and see my sister, who's in the hospital. Maybe she's getting out sometime today, I hope, in Pikeville, Kentucky. So anyway, just wanted y'all to know that we're starting off 2024 with a bang. We've got a lot going on, and fully intend to have people in D.C. and in other places around the country, wherever people might be, or where we can find these organizations that are trying to stymie the First Amendment rights for all Americans, not just some Americans. We're going to go stand in their face. Make sure we're heard and seen. They don't want to talk to veterans. They don't want to talk to Commander Schilling, who is actually active duty. They don't want to talk to Bree Fram, who is actually active duty in the Space Force. They don't want to talk to, all of our good friends out there who are active duty or veterans in any of these spaces, or Ann Murdoch, who is retired lieutenant colonel. They don't want to talk to any of those people because, we don't fit in that narrative. So as long as we can fight, and as long as we can pull together and be heard and make a scene about it, we're going to have to find some way to be heard and be seen. They're ignoring us. It's very deliberate. Heritage is ignoring us. New College of Florida is ignoring us. I've reached out and told them I'd like to sit on some of their panels. And they haven't sent me the first email back, but they're not going to either, because, I don't fit that narrative that they want to present. They can't control I represent a narrative that they don't want you to see because it weakens their narrative overall. So they don't want that. So that's why you're going to see very few of us, unless we're being idiots out there. Unless a bunch of us are being idiots out there, they don't want to see us, because we represent that positive narrative that they just can't really move the nation against too easily. Okay. So as long as that's the case, but if some of you go out there and you act like a darn idiot somewhere, forcing yourself on somebody else, being mean and abusive to somebody else, if you go out there and do things that are just, darn well will impact the whole community, that I'm calling you out on it. I will call you out on it. You've got to stop that. You're hurting the entire community by trying to force your way onto somebody else. You cannot do that. They have every right to believe and do as they choose as well. And so do we. But if we go out there and force our way on someone else, then we're denying them those blessings of liberty too. So stop. And with that, let's roll the outro now, which is actually the same thing as you saw at the beginning. But anyway, with that, I'm going to call it a day. We're heading over to the hospital to see my sister.